When the freshman class of 2022 moved into the University of Wyoming residence halls, they were filled with excitement and nervousness at the prospect of their college career starting in just a few short days. But for some, that hit a quick roadblock. Freshman Hunter Peterson excitedly went up to his room and found that 2 other people were already living there. So he and his family went down to the front desk and found that he was overbooked along with 49 other students. Hunter was temporarily placed with his resident assistant in a bunk bed in a small single room. Executive Director of Residence Hall and Dining Services Eric Webb says that they had to place other residents with their RAs temporarily, and others were even tripled up in the empty resident graduate assistant apartments. They even had to convert some day rooms known as fishbowls into temporary rooms, buying curtains for privacy and new furniture. They were maximizing all the space they had available.
We are really maximizing all of our space at this point to get by. There's always a little bit of a no-show rate. Students pay their deposit, they say they're coming to UW, they've typically registered for classes, etc., and then they just don't show up.
It took RLDS a few weeks to filter out these students and put them in their new permanent rooms. This extra hall, Crane, was permanently shut down in 2014, but in 2017, RLDS permanently shut down Hill Hall as well, with the intention of eventually tearing down both and building new residence halls. Little did they realize that enrollment would grow and they would eventually need Hill's 200 rooms a year later.
I've been on campus about 11 years. We've always had one additional residence hall, one residence hall that was always offline because we had extra capacity. I mean, we really hadn't seen any substantial growth for probably 20 years, so the idea that we could fit in the 4 Washakie halls was very doable until this last fall. We saw pretty substantial growth, especially in our freshmen, which is very impressive from an enrollment management standpoint. I think we're amazing value in higher ed. All of our residence halls were all built in from the late 50s to late 60s. They were adequate, they're functional, structurally they're sound. They're not what today's student wants. Today's student wants suites, private baths, more space, more community space, more amenities, and we just don't have that. So our long-term hope is to begin to build some new residence halls in some different locations on campus.
In 2015, the university paid Malham Architects of Portland, Oregon, $245,000 to create a proposed 10-year housing plan. Based on 5 final plan designs and meeting with UW administration, they went ahead with a final $200 million recommendation, which includes tearing down all existing halls in the next 10 years. This plan consisted of a parking garage, 10 new residence halls, and 2,000 new beds for residents, organized around 2 broader neighborhoods, the East and the West. Central courtyards provide open space for each neighborhood, with 4 buildings in the West community that include a total of 750 beds. 6 new buildings will define the East community, which includes a total of 1,250 beds. The building heights will also vary between 4 floors and 6 floors. The East and West communities will be organized around a central plaza and courtyard spaces and a main street connecting the university to the Wyoming community. This plan also recommends making the intersection of 15th and Ivinson into a pedestrian-only walkway known as Cowboy Corridor, with a new street painting of Steamboat. Despite the positive response from the first recommendation, the university spent another $291,000 in hiring KSQ Designs for an additional proposed plan. KSQ proposed 4 new designs. Each consisted of renovating White, McIntyre, Orr, and Downey Hall, but demolishing Crane and Hill complex to build new halls. The recommended locations are the Corvette parking lot, the current Crane Hill complex, or the rugby field. They also recommended the closure of 15th and Ivinson to traffic. Each of KSQ's plans cost significantly less than Malham's proposed plans by saving through renovating the existing 4 halls. Executive Director Eric Webb also suggested centralizing resident life by building new halls closer to campus. This could include extending the halls past 15th Street into the Cooper House parking lot, or building new halls on the current half-acre parking lot, Wyoming Hall, and onto UW PD.
With that also would be a replacement of dining operations as well. There's some desire to maybe not have one giant dining center, but maybe one that's half the size of Washakie, and then increase the retail dining, what we would consider retail, national brands, coffee houses, pizza shops, that kind of thing. Then begin to change our meal plans to provide more portability with those meal plans, to give students more options, different places to go, more of a feeling like living in a city. We do hear from a recruiting standpoint, both with athletics and through admissions, that students will say, the University of Wyoming's great, but I can't live in those halls. I need a private bath, I need more space, I need, students make a decision to go to school based off a couple things, and at least two of those are, where am I going to live and how much am I going to pay? The question is, how do we fund these new halls? We're talking hundreds of millions of dollars, and we're still working on those options. One option is a long-term loan from the state that we would pay back at a relatively low interest. We're optimistic that the long-term loan will go through. It gives us more flexibility. The beauty is, if you think about that, it's the state of Wyoming investing in the state of Wyoming. It's a win-win from that standpoint. We won't hear a yes or no on the long-term loan from the state until probably March. By the time we get through those processes, design, bid, build, and open, we're probably 3 years out. Our hope is in the short term to do some renovations to the Tobin House, buy new furniture for that. That has a capacity for 67 students. So our summer to-do, as long as we get Board of Trustees approval, is to go in, renovate that, upgrade that, buy new furniture. It's right across the street, location's good, and we'd use that for not only what we call swing space, so we wouldn't have to double up RAs at that point, but we'd use that for housing throughout the year. So that should handle our growth, at least for 1 year, maybe 2 years. We hope our timing is such that we don't have to go back and open Hill. We may not have a choice but to reopen Hill in the short term. If we do, we'd probably do some work in there, spruce them up a little bit. So this idea with the Tobin House is temporary. We hope that's the bridge that gets us to new housing.